There are 1,000 hacking at the branches of evil to one who is striking at the root. It takes two to speak the truth, and one to speak and the other to hear. Theo. When you know the truth will set you free. John. The Universal History of the United States of America. Where we left off, by bribing some of those in whom she had confided, Captain Argall prevailed on her to come on board his vessel. This is where Pocahontas marries, where she was detained respectfully and brought to Jamestown. His motive was, and the hope that the possession of Pocahontas would give the English an ascendancy over her father, Powhatan. In this, however, he was disappointed. Powhatan, Powhatan offered corn and friendship if they would first restore his daughter, but whom the others would not come to no terms until reparation was made for what he resented as an act of unhandsome treachery. During her detention at Jamestown, she made an impression on the heart of Mr. Rolfe, a young gentleman of estimation in the colony, who also succeeded in gaining her affections. They were married with the consent of Powhatan, who ever after continued to be a sincere friend to the English. This led to a treaty with the Chickahominies, a brave and powerful tribe, who submitted to the English and became their tributaries. In 1613, Sir Thomas Dale divided a considerable portion of the lands into lots of 3 acres each, and granted one of these to each individual in full propriety, although they were still required to devote a great portion of their labor to the public. Yet a sudden change was made in the appearance and habits of the colony. Industry advanced with rapid strides, and with the colonies were no more fearful of wanting bread, either for themselves or for the immigrants who came annually from England. Early in the year 1614, Sir Thomas Gates returned to England, leaving the government again with Sir Thomas Dale. In 1615, 50 acres of land were allotted to each individual, which was actually laid off and delivered to the persons having titles to them, who were permitted to exercise over them. In each manner he was agreeable to themselves. All the rights of ownership. About the same time, tobacco was first cultivated in Virginia. So that's 1615. This tobacco plant was detested by the king, who used all his influence to prevent its use. He even wrote a pamphlet against it, which he styled the Counterblast. It was discountenanced by the leading members of Parliament, and also by the company, who issued edicts against its cultivation, and although on first experiment it was unpleasant in its taste and disagreeable in its effects, it surmounted all difficulties and has by an unaccountable caprice been brought into general use, and became one of the most considerable staples of America. In the spring of 1616, Sir Thomas Dale sailed for England, having placed the government in the hands of George Yeardley, his deputy, who after a very lax administration of 1 year was succeeded in May 1617 by Captain Argall, who had been appointed deputy governor by the company. He was a man of great talents and energy of mind, but selfish, haughty, and tyrannical. He provided with ability for the wants of the colony. Martial law was continued during a season of peace, and Mr. Brewster, who was tried under the arbitrary system for contemptuous words spoken against the governor, was sentenced to suffer death. A respite of execution was with difficulty obtained, and on an appeal to the council in England, the sentence was reversed. While martial law was, according to Stith, the common law of the land, the deputy governor seems to have been the sole legislator. His edicts marked the severity of his rule, but some of them evince an attention to the public safety. He ordered that merchandise should be sold at the advance price of 25 cents, and tobacco taken in payment at the rate of 3 shillings a pound, under the penalty of 3 years' servitude to the company, that no person should traffic with the Indians or teach them the use of firearms under pain of death, that no person should hunt deer or hogs without leave from the governor, that no person should shoot unless in his own defense, until a new supply of ammunition arrived, on pain of a year's personal service, that no one should go on board the ships without the governor's leave, that every person should go to church on Sundays under the penalty of slavery during the present week, for the first offense a month, for the second, and a year for the third. The rigor of this administration necessarily excited much discontent, and the complaints of the Virginians at length made their way to the company. Lord Delaware being now dead, Mr. Yeardley was appointed Captain General, with instructions to examine with attention the wants of the people, and to redress them. The new governor arrived in April 1619, and soon after, to the inexpressible joy of the inhabitants, declared his intentions to convoke a colonial assembly. This is an important era in the history of Virginia. Heretofore, all legislative authority had been exercised either by the corporation in England or by their officers in this country. The people, either personally or by their representatives, had no voice in the government of themselves, and their most important concerns were decided by persons unacquainted with their situation, and always possessing interests different from theirs. This first assembly met at Jamestown on the 19th of June, 1619. The colony was not then divided into countries, or counties, I should say, and the members were elected by the different boroughs amounting to 7 in number. So you have for instance, you have Westmoreland County, City of New Kensington, and then you have a borough, and then you have municipalities. So there's a lot of divisions to a county. The assembly composed of the governor, the council, and burgesses met together in one apartment, and there they debated all matters through conducive to the general welfare. Also townships. So you have county, city, townships, boroughs, municipalities, and there they debated all matters thought conducive to the general welfare. The laws then enacted, which it is believed are no longer extant, were transmitted to England for the approbation of the treasurer and company, and were said to have been judiciously formed. The immigrations from England continued to be very considerable, and were made at great expense to the company, but as yet few females could not contemplate Virginia as a place of permanent residence, and proposed, after amassing some wealth, to return to their native land, to put an end to a mode of thinking in its effects so ruinous to the colony. It was proposed to send out 100 maids as wives for the colony. 90 young girls are transported in the beginning of the year 1620, and 60 more in the subsequent year. There were immediately disposed of to the young planters. The price of a wife was estimated first at 100 and afterwards at 150 pounds of tobacco, then selling at 3 shillings per pound, and a debt no contracted was made of greater dignity than any other, and the education of the children was likewise attended to, and several steps were taken towards founding a college, afterwards completely established by William and Mary about the same time. The company received orders from the king to transport to Virginia 100 idle and dissolute persons, then in the custody of the knight marshal. These men, dispersed through the colony, became a useful and acceptable addition of laborers, and were the first convicts transported to America. Chapter 3. From the embarkation of the Plymouth Company to the close of the Pequot War. We have seen with what slow and difficult steps the first or southern colony, although supported by individuals of great wealth and influence in the nation, advanced to a firm and secure establishment. Let us now employ our attention in viewing the establishment of the Plymouth Company. King James first granted letters patent to this company in 1606 to possess all the lands in America lying between 34 and 45 degrees of north latitude. They applied for leave to go under the royal sanction, but were refused. At length they obtained permission from the Virginia Company to make a settlement near the mouth of the Hudson's River. It was resolved that part of the congregation should remove first, and the remaining part with their pastor after the new settlement had commenced. This produced a scene of parting not to be described. They took their leave of one another, which proved to be their last leave with many of them. They sailed from Holland to Southampton in England, where they met the other ships and their friends, who were to accompany them from England in July 1620. On the 5th of August they sailed from Southampton, but on the account of bad weather and the leakiness of one of their vessels, they were obliged twice to put back. The poor vessel they were compelled to leave, while as many as could be accommodated. 101 persons of the adventurers entered on board the other ship and took their last leave of the land of their fathers on the 6th of September. Called to go out into a place which they should after receive for an inheritance, they obeyed, and they went out, not knowing whither they went. After a tedious voyage, safely housed in the ark which God in his providence had diverted them to prepare, protected by him who directs the storm, on the 10th of November they arrived at Cape Cod, the Dutch intending to keep Hudson River, and bribed the shipmaster to carry these adventurers so far northward that they should not find their intended place of residence. They had found land, and it was too late in the season to put to sea again. They were in a good harbor, but on the most barren and inhospitable shore. On their arrival they stepped upon the strand, and with bended knees gave thanks to God, who had preserved their number entire, and brought them in safety to these unhallowed shores. Being without the limits of their patent as the civil government, they were in the state of nature. They therefore procured and signed a civil compact, by which they severally bound themselves to be obedient to all ordinances made by their body, acknowledging the King of Great Britain to be their lawful sovereign. They say in the preamble, having undertaken for the glory of God and advancement of the Christian faith and honor of our King and country, a voyage to plant the first colony in the northern parts of Virginia, do by these presents. The instrument was executed on the board their ship on the 11th of November